Hey gang, so we got the new monthly report for May and we have Alien Week and 4.2 dropping on us at any moment really, so let's get into what they're foreshadowing for that. It seems like this team was working on 3 different tracks this month. The first, and the one they were apparently most proud of, was the ability to have comms calls around LZs, and I would assume Wickelow's place, since that's the only place I think I've actually seen comms with a face actually pop up. It does sound like we're getting more voices for LZs, and I think I heard one when I was pulling into Lorville, but it only triggered like 1 or 2 times, despite me landing there a lot this batch. For those who are around, I'd say probably in the Delamar or Levski days with Edlin, you can see how this will go if they can actually get it working again. Maybe we'll see this working in 4.2. Time will tell. The second track they were working on was the wildline triggers for NPCs in combat. So you would hear them throwing more expletives about your mom, which is always a bonus. Your mom deserves it. Trust me. Trust me. And the third track was standardized trigger words. It sounds like this is more for back-end organization than something we'd see on the front end, at least not directly. So, I mean, I think it was something more for the devs to use than we would be using on our side. Not a big shocker here with the single player Squadron 42 being the focus this year, but a lot of work is being done on NPCs in combat and getting realistic reactions and decisions out of them. So perception, hunting the player, ammo, medical, that sort of thing. This spread out to them utilizing cover, which is something we saw at the Sitcon demo. Man, was it really 7 or 8 months back? Woo, time flies. Anyway, beyond this, they were focusing on cleaning up behaviors in wildlines. So, as has been the pattern this year, polish, especially the things that will be more visible in Squadron 42 with it just being a single player game. The team with the longest name strikes again, this time working on the UI for the new mission system. It looks like this is mostly visual items, but that makes sense when you're talking about UI. They also did some bug swatting with StarScript, which I think is a system that'll govern NPC reactions, if I recall correctly. This team's still plugging away at NPC navigation of areas outside of Divine Zone, so think outside of bunkers or buildings, so that's cool, as well as giving them more traversal options like climbing ladders, jumping, that kind of stuff. And it turns out that this isn't just human NPCs either. It sounds like they'll be giving some of these skills to critters too, so no more standing on a tiny ledge and ganking Copion, I guess. Subsumption is also a top thing, which is more of a PU thing than a Squadron 42 thing, interestingly enough. At least if I'm understanding what subsumption was, which I always thought I knew what subsumption was, but maybe I've been misunderstanding what subsumption is all this time. Moving on. Facial animations and voice packs for NPCs that they're apparently going to be sprinkling all over the verse is what this team is working on. They also worked on animations for a new critter, which I'm guessing is probably the bigger versions of the Valakar, but they might have a future surprise for us. Maybe. New critters, which are again, probably the Valakar. Heavy armor, which I'm assuming is that heavy stuff that's rad resistant that you've been seeing in the PTU. And they're apparently working on light armor now, so that's kind of cool. So I'm wondering if that'll be radiation related or not. So, I mean, I guess we'll find out. So let's be honest, this is probably why most people are tuning into the monthly report, but here we go. So the big note is that the Pioneer is moving through its white box, which isn't too surprising as this is an enormous ship and extremely complicated, as it'll probably be the big ticket item for one of the more interesting core loops to the game. Well, yeah, I mean, take your time, CIG. It's kind of sounding like they're going to make construction kind of the thing that all other game loops will tie into. So outside of the Pioneer, the Apollo passed its gray box reviews for both versions, so that's cool. The Perseus is working through what sounds like a late gray box, so that should wrap sometime in June. And then it's just polishing up in time for the year-end sale, either IAE or SitCon, hopefully. Might be before that, but I wouldn't expect it before IAE or SitCon. It would be a pretty big surprise. It sounds like the Asgard helped the production schedule of the Paladin, and it's also near the end of gray box. Unlike the Perseus, the Paladin's a hair smaller and at least looks to be built on the same platform as the Asgard and the Valkyrie, so it should come along pretty quickly. So the Redeemer's going to have some real competition, I'd say, sooner than later. Then we got news on 4 unannounced ships. It sounds like 2 are in the early stages, so won't be seen for a bit, and we're not going to be getting any hints on them, depending on how big and complex they are. And 1's waiting on, I think, Lot 0, so nearish horizon. That might be the Prowler variant we got a sneak peek of. And there's a 4th ship that's getting a special pilot entrance animation. So, I mean, that sounds alien to me. What do you think? Alien? I'm thinking alien. Lots of work on Invictus and Spectrum support, and then support on FreeFly and comlinks on various stuff. You remember, you were there. And they went to bar citizens, including China, where they did big info dumps, which they later had to clarify and walk back. This is always the meatiest of the sections, and this gang works on pretty much everything to one degree or another. Medbeds cure rad damage. That's good to know for the upcoming sandbox activity. The Shadow Loop hacking is making headway, but it sounds like they're still doing explorations on what this game loop will be, rather than working their way through actual implementation. They're working their way through improving the loot system and item recovery, which should be hitting tier 1 soonish. If you didn't know, the fact that you now regen with all or most of the gear that you have on is just a short-term stopgap, and that's tier 0. Progress is, well, progressing for radar scanning, which is kind of surprising because I would think this would be a really important element of Squadron 42, but here we are. And it sounds like they're aware that the pendulum is swung in favor of unlawful activities, but they're not really saying what they're going to do to address it. So Klesher is safe for now. Unless you're an NPC with Jacklium in your backpack, I guess. They're trying to get the transit system working, so hopefully no more 180 degrees spin at Lorville. They'll dump you on the track if you're standing on the platform. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully they get that working and it won't have the rail coming up through the terrain anymore. And they worked on the Valakar, of course, the big one, and FPS radar and scanning, which I can only assume is going hand in hand with the ship version. And finally, and this is kind of cool, they're working on the next level of the flight model, which they've been mentioning a lot lately. And that includes the atmospheric flight with the control planes, the aerons on the wings, as well as another stab at hover mode. So hopefully hover mode was kind of close. I hated it, but I could see what they were trying to do. It's just when you dipped your nose more than 5 degrees, you'd be going rocketing off at 500 meters per second into a wall, and you could do nothing to control it unless you were just moving very, very slightly, which wasn't that fun to work with. So hopefully this version is a little better. I think they probably could have just tweaked the last version. It would have been fine, but they chose to go in a whole other direction just because the community was really upset about it. Moving on. Dynamic lighting and pyro. That was all there was for this one, but it probably deserved a longer blurb, as this was probably related to all the stuff going on under the dynamic weather. So that's pretty cool. And the new settlement that they have, well, I guess it's not a settlement, the outpost facility, looks pretty cool. So lighting, if any of you guys watch this, toot your own horns in this. Lighting in this game is not one of the things that people complain about with this game. Lighting and sound design in Star Citizen is absolutely top notch. This group worked on Invictus and Wickelow's Emerald Flea Market, and they also worked on locations that'll be released in July and August. And Elliot Maltby certainly seemed to be suggesting that something big and cool is still coming in those months, so we have those things to look forward to. Lots of work for this team. This shouldn't be too surprising, as we've had a new event, sandbox activity, almost every month. They're also working on how the story will advance moving forward, both the A and B stories, which is the Xenothreat gang story and the Regeneration failure story. So narrative team, they have got their hands full. Big one here, real big. Dynamic server meshing is still in progress. And seriously, that is the whole shebang right there. And shebang, that's not a word I just throw around willy-nilly. Neither is willy-nilly. Oh God, I turned 50 in 4 days. Is this how it starts? Where was I? Online technology, right. So they worked on moderation tools, which, let's be honest, are sorely lacking at the moment. I'm not sure if this will actually be in-game or out-of-game. They didn't really say, but either way, good on them. They need it. I'm not old, you're old. And last one out the gates is the UI team, which worked on, surprise, UI, mostly for the Mirai Guardian MX, which will then be retrofitted over to the other Guardians, and I would guess probably the Furies, maybe. They didn't say that, but I mean, they pretty much have to, right? And they worked on optimizing UI, and for an MMO with this much detail, that's pretty damn critical, so good job, CIG. Last line in the report for the UI group was also interesting, where they said they are working on confidential 3D interactive UIs to replace one of the older systems in the game. And I mean, yeah, that sounds super interesting. I'm guessing it's not the map, since they just redid that. So maybe the ship loadout screen, it's changed a little over the years, but not a whole lot. I can't really think of anything else that would really benefit from 3D other than like scanning and radar, which would also make sense, but I don't know. What's your thoughts? What do you think it is? And gang, that's it for this one. Shoot me a line in the down below bits, like and subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff. Catch you next time.